Hello, this is Kyle Allender, and today in this video I'll be arguing that it is morally permissible to experiment on spiders. And so, what is the moral question before us? The moral question is this: is it morally permissible to experiment on spiders? Our team says yes, it is morally permissible, and we have three main arguments for this. The first argument is simply that spiders are not moral persons and on any account of personhood. The second argument is that spiders um, have lower level functioning than other animals that we already do experiment on. And finally, the third argument is the sort of utilitarian argument that the societal benefits of doing these experiments are going to outweigh any cost. And I will get into the details of that. So the first argument is simply this: that spiders are not moral persons on any account of personhood. Now, the cool thing about this argument is I don't need to defend any particular view about what personhood is. I think that on any account, no matter whether you're even if you're super conservative on this question of moral personhood, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that spiders are simply not moral persons. There's several reasons for this. One of the reasons I would argue is that spiders do not have a sense of pain. They don't have a sense of qualia like pain. Now, in the philosophy of mind, pain has a very specific definition, has a very specific understanding of what pain is. Typically, it's understood in this qualia like sense, which is basically there's something that feels like to have the sensation of pain. But spiders do not have the neural capabilities to experience this kind of pain. They don't have this first order sort or first person like experience of this pain like sensation. And so, because of that, then their moral personhood, at least on most accounts, are going to be severely reduced. And then on any further, like super conservative views, it just seems to be the case that there is simply no plausible personhood viewpoint that we can present here that would make spiders moral persons, especially given that they don't have moral rules, um, they don't experience any pain. They're also very small creatures, so they don't have higher lower level functioning. And so because of that, then that sort of gets rid of a lot of their moral statuses. The second objection is a sort of analogical argument. And so consider this. If you are okay with experimenting on, let's say, rats, for example, then we should be okay with experimenting on spiders. Now, of course, many ethicists, there are some ethicists out there that will say it is morally wrong to experiment on rats. But I would argue that any reason that they have against the use of rat experimentation simply cannot apply in the case of spiders. And the reason is, multifold. So, for example, as I mentioned earlier, spiders don't feel pain, whereas rats might potentially feel pain. Spiders also don't really have a sense of community, or at least they seem to not really, act in moral ways, whereas rats might be able to. They might form a community, as we've seen in many type of experiments. And so, no matter what, if we accept, for example, that it's okay to experiment on rats or some other animals, right, then we should be okay with experimenting on spiders, especially given that they are certainly at a much lower level, cognitively speaking, than those animals would be. Now, the third argument is a simply utilitarian argument, which is that the experiments of these the experiments of these spiders is going to greatly outweigh any cost associated with it. So why might one think this? Well, consider this. So consider that silk, spider silk in this case, or spider webs, can actually be very useful in building new robotic systems. They can also be useful in building very tall structures and very strong structures, and yet very light structures as well. So it's very cheap. They can also be used in robotics research, such as if you need to clean your house or something, and you need something that picks up the dirt from a very small location or something. Then you can use that. You can use the spider legs as a way to pick up those small things. Now, of course, those are the three arguments. Now I want to mention the objections. So the first objection is this sort of utilitarian objection, and that is that actually no, that the cost of doing these experiments will outweigh the benefits. And the reason for this is because there's actually not that many benefits to this technology. And so let's say, for example, like, this is how the objection might go. Let's say, well, okay, even if you could use these spiders as a way to advance robotics or something, right? It's just simply like we already have other kinds of technologies that can do what any techno. So basically, any technology that we develop from these spiders are going to not really be useful in the long run, given that there's other ways that we could create this technology, right, without the use of the spiders. Um, Now, my response to the objection is sort of two main points. The first point is that we cannot really say whether that's actually a good objection. And the reason why is because, well, we cannot really calculate, right, based on based on the robotics that we have now, we cannot really say like, oh, like these spiders are not going to be useful in the future. Like, what if they are very useful? Not only that, but consider this. Like, and here's my second point, which is, well, let's say that at first, okay, yeah, they're not very useful, and it goes on. Let's say the research goes on for 10 to 20 years, where it's just not useful. But then we make a breakthrough where actually, oh no, we need we need to do these experiments more so that we can advance our biotics more or something, whatever it might be. And so in that case, then even if the initial stage doesn't really bring benefits, it might actually bring benefits in the long run to technologies that we haven't even conceived of yet. And so for this reason, that objection I would say is very weak. Now, the second objection is simply this demonization objection, which is, well, are we just demonizing spiders? Aren't we just saying that spiders are like just this like doesn't isn't this just going to like make spiders look even worse than what they already look like, or at least of how they're portrayed in pop culture? Um, and the issue with this objection is actually, I think it's the opposite. So I think that if we do experiments on these spiders, then we can actually learn more about these spiders and learn actually, no, these spiders are not dangerous to society. They are not demonized, and they can actually be used for further development research. Now, of course, that's not the only concern. The last objection is a sort of anthropomorphic bias objection. So this is how this kind of objection works, which is basically says, well, you guys are just sort of assuming that they aren't moral persons. Like, why not just grant that they are moral persons? Why not just bring in this precautionary principle and say that, oh, well, even if we don't consider them moral persons now, given our ethical theories about what moral persons are, what if they just are moral persons in the future? Like, what if we were wrong about our morality, right? Like, aren't we bringing a sort of like speciation bias towards humans and other higher order animals and assigning them personhood, but not assigning spiders personhood? My resp- and this is a good objection. In fact, this is probably the best objection. But here's a potential response that one might give, which is that this objection, I think, ignores the fact that on any account of morality, like it's never been the case where we know for a fact that something has lower cognitive abilities, like in this case in spiders, and so then, oh, we need to now apply personhood to something that intrinsically has lower cognitive abilities. Um, and the issue here is like our moral progress has never kind of worked in that way. It's always worked to where, oh, we actually learned something new about this creature, right? And so we're going to apply moral personhood to it, um, because we were wrong about its, cognitive capacities, right? But here, it's very obvious, at least plausibly, that spiders intrinsically don't have this higher order level thinking. Now, perhaps they do, but that needs to be demonstrated. Okay, that can't just be asserted. So the person that makes this objection needs to actually show that spiders do have this higher order cognitive abilities that in the same way that other animals might, right? So then we can apply moral personhood to those. And so because of that, given all those objections, given what I've stated, We believe that it is morally permissible to experiment on spiders, given that they're not more persons, given that there's pretty clear analogical reasoning to other things, to other animals that we could use, and finally the societal benefits in regards to or the potential benefits of the technology. So that's all I have to say.